Some of the strongest accounts in the game aren't defeated because they're weak. They're defeated because enough people decide to focus them. And honestly, the first time I really understand this, it completely changed how I look at power in the kingdom building games. Because when you're newer, power feels simple. Big accounts beat small accounts. More spending beats less spending. Whales beat free to play. Makes sense. That's how most players think. It's how I thought too. Then I saw a player make a comment that stuck in my head. He basically said, if everyone bands together, I would die. And the funny part is that the player saying this wasn't weak. He was probably one of the strongest players around, which immediately creates a weird question. How can one of the strongest players in the kingdom be worried about dying? Shouldn't Strange solve the problem? That's what I used to think. Then I start paying attention to how strong accounts actually get defeated. And that's where things get interesting, because most whales don't lose because somebody strong appear. Most whales lose because enough people appear. And that's completely different thing. And honestly, I think many players underestimate how important that distinction is. Because if one player can beat you, the solution is usually simple. Get stronger. But what happens when 10 players can beat you? Or 20? Or 50? Now Strange isn't the only variable anymore. Now coordination enters in the conversation. And coordination is scary because power has limits. Coordination scales. Then I start noticing something strange in the reports. The strongest account often don't fear enemy whales. They fear organized kingdoms. At first that sounds ridiculous to me. Why won't a massive account fear weaker accounts? Then I start watching how wars actually unfold. A whale can beat one rally, sometimes two, sometimes several. A whale can survive a lot. But eventually the game stopped being about one fight. It became about endurance, refills, reinforcements, follow-up rallies, kingdom activity, and suddenly the strongest account in the game started looking a lot more human. Which creates another realization. Maybe players spend too much time measuring individual strength, and not enough time measuring collective strength. Because if 10 average players can create a result that one whale can't stop, then the conversation changes completely. Then I notice another mistake players make. When Kingdom lose war, they often blame power. We need stronger players. We need bigger spenders. We need more whales. And sure, sometimes that help. But honestly, I've been seeing kingdoms with huge spenders struggle because nobody worked together. And I've been seeing kingdoms with fewer spenders massively outperform expectations because everybody move as one group. That shouldn't happen if power is the only thing that matter, but it happens all the time. And that's where I think people are looking at the wrong scoreboard. Then things got even more interesting because I start thinking about what power actually does. Power gives options, power gives flexibility, power gives survivability, power gives influence, but power doesn't remove limits. Every account has limits, even the biggest account. The problem is that weaker players usually discover their limits easily. Strong players discover their limits much later. And when they finally do, it often comes as a shock because they're used to winning, they're used to surviving, they're used to being the strongest players in the fight. Then suddenly they run into a situation where Strange alone isn't enough. And that's where many players learn the difference between being powerful and being unstoppable. Those are not the same things. Then I start paying attention to kingdom politics. And honestly, I think politics creates some of the strongest weapon in the game. Not heroes, not gear, not spending. Politics. Because if Kingdom decide that player must go, everything change. Now rallies become coordinated, targets become organized, timing becomes synchronized, objectives become shared, and suddenly a problem that was impossible for one player become possible for hundreds players. That's a scary realization because it means some battles are decided long before the rally get launched. Then I noticed something else. The strongest accounts often become symbols. People stop seeing them as a players. They become target, threats, goals, challenges, trophies. And once that happens, the motivation to defeat them increase dramatically. I've been literally seeing Kingdom become more coordinated simply because everybody wanted to be part of the story. Everyone wants to say, we talk him down. That's powerful. And honestly, I don't think enough players account for that because visibility creates pressure. The bigger your account becomes, the more attention it attracts. And attention isn't always good. Then I start asking myself a different question. If teamwork beats individual power, why do so many players still obsess over individual power? And I think the answer is simple. Individual power is visible. Coordination is invisible. You can look at the account and see the power. You usually don't see the coordination until the fight starts, which means many players underestimated it, right up until the moment it destroys them. And honestly, I think that's one of the most important lessons in Age of Empire Mobile. The stronger account is not always the most dangerous thing on the battlefield. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is Kingdom that agrees on one target. Because one account can only be on one place. A coordinated kingdom can be everywhere. And that's why that original comment stuck with me. If everyone bands together, I'll die. At first it sounds surprising. The more I thought about it, the more it sounded inevitable. Because Strange has limits. Coordination doesn't stop where one account stops. It keeps growing. And maybe that's the biggest misconception players have about the power. Strong accounts don't die because they're weak. They die because enough people decide they should. I'm curious what you think. Have you ever seen a whale get completely overwhelmed by coordination? Or have you been part of a kingdom that took down somebody everybody thought was untouchable? Because honestly, the more wars I watch, the more I think the strongest force in this game isn't power, it's agreement. Anyway guys, that is for this video. Huge thank you to all channel members for supporting the channel. And if you do like to support the channel as well, you can go and check it out, the join button below. Members get early access to videos, exclusive contents, members shoutouts, and War Wars member can reach me out directly for strategy and account advice. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.